right, guys, welcome to part 94 of my overview of the Bible story. Thank you so much for joining me again in this beautiful episode. I love this episode, guys. We're going to talk about the bride. Beautiful. You know, there have been some scary episodes in this series. I've got great news for you. The scary episodes are all in the past. Now we just have great episodes left. Well, actually, we only have 2 episodes basically in this series. This is like the second last one in this story, guys. If you have a Bible, just basically look at the second last page of this book. We're at the second last page. So guys, this is actually a very comforting episode for me. You'll see why it's comforting. But remember what Jesus said? Remember one of the parables he told, the parable of the wedding banquet? Well, he said this. Jesus spoke to them again in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son." Wow, that's what the kingdom of heaven is like? The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. Well, at the end of the book of Revelation, this is what we see happening, okay? So guys, we're in the book of Revelation. We're almost finished this book of Revelation and the book of the Bible. The whole Bible, we're almost done. So thank you guys for joining me in this beautiful episode. Let's just start reading, okay? So then I heard what sounded like a great multitude, like the roar of rushing waters, and like loud peals of thunder, shouting, "Hallelujah! For our Lord God Almighty reigns. Let us rejoice and be glad and give him glory. For the wedding of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. Fine linen, bright and clean, was given her to wear." Fine linen stands for the righteous acts of God's holy people. Interesting. The fine linen stands for the righteous acts of God's holy people. So guys, the wedding of the Lamb. Who's the Lamb? Jesus, guys. Jesus, the Son of God. The son of that king, the king's son, the wedding banquet, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. I guess the wedding. Wow. Guys, this is going to end with a wedding? I guess so. Guys, are we recording? Yes, we are. Thank you so much for your patience. So let's keep reading. Then the angel said to me, "Write this. Blessed are those who are invited to the wedding supper of the Lamb." Guys, gotta silence my phone. Sorry about that. Blessed are those who are invited to the wedding supper of the Lamb. And he added, "These are the true words of God." Guys, these are the true words of God. Do you believe it? It's up to you. Wow, invited to the wedding supper of the Lamb. Interesting. So then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared. And the sea was the sea was also gone, guys. Some translations say, and the sea was no more. The ocean? No more ocean? Maybe there's just going to be fresh water. I mean, we know there's going to be a river. We're going to see that in the next episode. The river of the water of life coming from underneath the throne. There's going to be fresh water. I don't know, maybe no more ocean. This is a bit mysterious. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. Wow. The new Jerusalem. The city of the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. Interesting. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death, or sorrow, or crying, or pain. All these things are gone forever." Man, guys, isn't that amazing? Look at that. Who's he? Guys, this is Jesus, okay? Jesus will wipe every tear from our eyes. There will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. Guys, just think about it. Today might be your last day of crying. Today might be your last day of pain. We're so close to the end of this story, guys. I know it. Take heart. Let this encourage you. There's going to be no more death or sadness, no more emotional pain, no more mental pain, no more physical pain. All these things are gone forever. Wow. We will live with God, guys. He will live with us, and we will be his people. Don't you want that? God himself will be with them. Oh, to live with God, guys, to be with God, that's what he wants. He wants that. Incredible. And the one sitting on the throne said, "Look, I am making everything new." And then he said to me, "Write this down, for what I tell you is trustworthy and true." And he also said, "It is finished. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To all who are thirsty, I will give freely from the springs of the water of life." So we know there's going to be springs, right? Fresh water. Wow, I will give freely from the springs of the water of life. All who are victorious will inherit all these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. Interesting. So here we've got this relationship of a father-child relationship. But we also are seeing here a husband-wife relationship. So look at this. Then one of the 7 angels who held the 7 bowls containing the 7 last plagues came and said to me, "Come with me, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." The wife of the Lamb. Well, Jesus is the Lamb, the wife of Jesus. This is kind of mysterious, right? So look at this. So he took me in the Spirit to a great high mountain, and he showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. It shone with the glory of God and sparkled like a precious stone, like jasper, as clear as crystal. The city wall was broad and high, with 12 gates guarded by 12 angels. Notice the number 12 here, guys. A lot of 12s, right? So 12 gates guarded by 12 angels, and the names of the 12 tribes of Israel were written on the gates. Okay, the names of the 12 tribes of Israel are written on the gates. So this city has something to do with Israel. Okay, so we're seeing Israel right here at the end of the story. So God hasn't forgotten about this idea of Israel. Okay, and then look at this. There were 3 gates on each side, east, north, south, and west. The wall of the city had 12 foundation stones, and on them were written the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Who were the 12 apostles of the Lamb? Remember his 12 disciples. Remember, one of them betrayed Jesus. That was Judas Iscariot. And so they voted in another one. But when they didn't vote, they they asked God to, to choose a replacement for Judas, and that guy was Matthias. So, yeah, we have the 12 apostles, which are the foundation stones of the wall of the city. So here we see, all right, so we're seeing the 12 apostles, and we're seeing the 12 tribes of Israel. Remember when we talked about the 24 elders a few episodes ago? That when John saw the throne of God, the throne had 24 other thrones around it, and 24 elders sitting on those thrones. And I think those 24 elders represent all of God's people, Israel plus the church. And here we're seeing the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles, right? That make up this city. So the tribes of Israel are written on the gates, the 12 gates of the city. And here we've got the 12 apostles, which are the 12 foundation stones. So this is, it's pretty interesting to think about. It's pretty mysterious. So the angel who talked to me held in his hand a gold measuring stick to measure the city, its gates, and its wall. When he measured it, he found it was a square, as wide as it was long. In fact, its length and width and height were each 12,000 stadia. Okay, there's another 12,000 stadia. Now, this is a unit of measurement. 12,000 stadia is equal to over 2,000 kilometers. Okay, so I think it's about 2,200 kilometers. So this is a massive city, right? Look, we're measuring the city, its gates, its wall, everything. Okay, the length of the city is the same as the width. It's a square, and height as well, all over 2,000 kilometers. So 2,000 kilometers this way. That's a massive city, guys. 2,000 kilometers, 2,000 kilometers, 2,000 kilometers. It's a cube, or maybe it seems like a cube, but maybe a pyramid. Some people think this is describing a pyramid. I'm not sure. So look at this. Then he measured the walls and found them to be 216 feet thick, according to the human standard used by the angel. Man, guys, that's about 70 meters thick. Can you imagine a city wall? 70 meters. That's like at the length of a soccer field almost, guys. A soccer field. That's a thick wall. I've been to the Wall of China, the Great Wall of China. That was cool. That wall is thick for a wall, but it's not that thick. The Wall of China, I'm trying to remember when I was there. It was like, I think it was about maybe, I don't think it was 10 meters. Maybe 5 meters. If you know, let me know if you've been there. Certainly not. It's maybe 5, maybe maximum, I would say 5 meters. This is 70 meters, about, maybe a bit less. Wow, guys. So we have a 12 here. Notice the 12s. These details, they have meaning. Okay, so let's keep reading. The wall was made of jasper, and the city was pure gold, as clear as glass. The wall of the city was built on foundation stones inlaid with 12 precious stones. The first was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase. I don't even know what that is, guys. Some sort of a stone. Chrysoprase. the 11th jacinth, the 12th amethyst. I don't even know most of these stones, guys. I know sapphire. I know jasper. I think I know amethyst. I know topaz, and I know onyx. The rest, I don't know. But wow. So this is going to be a beautiful city. Look at that. I mean, pure gold. The city was pure gold. The wall was made of jasper, and the city was pure gold, as clear as glass. Interesting. Gold and clear. So this is beautiful, guys. So the 12 gates were made of pearls, each from a single pearl. Wow, that'd be a massive pearl. This is why sometimes people talk about the gates of heaven as the pearly gates. Right? The pearly gates, because the gates are made out of a pearl. Okay, so from a single pearl. How could a pearl be that big, guys? That's crazy. Think about the oyster, or how are pearls made? Is it in clams or oysters? I always forget. That'd be a massive clam, right? To make a pearl as big as a gate, that'd be a monster clam. I don't know, maybe in heaven there are monster clams. So, yeah, so there's these huge pearls, right? And the main street was pure gold, as clear as glass. I saw no temple in the city, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. And the city has no need of sun or moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city, and the Lamb is its light. The Lamb is the light. God, the glory of God illuminates the city. Notice this, guys. I saw no temple in the city. So this is a bit mysterious, because at the end of the book of Ezekiel, we do see a temple. God shows Ezekiel this great, futuristic temple. So when I read this, it almost seems to me like there's almost like the New Jerusalem is going to come down on top of the existing city of Jerusalem, but it's going to almost be a separate city. Because at the end of Ezekiel, God said, in chapter 43 of Ezekiel, God said, "This is the place for the soles of my feet. This is the place for my throne. I'm going to live here. I'm going to reign over over Israel forever." And so, well, we see a temple there, but here it says, I saw no temple in the city. So there's kind of a mystery here, how this is going to be. But yeah, beautiful, guys. It's no need of the sun or the moon. Wow, it's going to be a different reality. I'm sure many things are going to be the same, but many things are going to be different. We won't need the sun or the moon, guys, because it's going to be bright. The glory of God is going to illuminate the city. Man, I can't wait to see what that actually looks like. So the nations will walk in its light, and the kings of the world will enter the city in all their glory. Wow. So this city is going to give light to the whole world. The nations will walk in its light, and the kings of the world will enter the city in all their glory. So the city isn't taking up the whole world. There's going to be nations in the world. The kings of the world will go into the city. Its gates will never be closed at the end of the day, because there is no night there. And all the nations will bring their glory and honor into the city. Nothing evil will be allowed to enter, nor anyone who practices shameful idolatry and dishonesty, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Wow. Can you imagine? No, no evil in a city. Have you ever been to a city where there's no evil? Well, this is going to be the first one, guys. The first city where everything's going to be perfect, pure, you know. Nothing evil will be allowed to enter the city. So does that mean there's going to be evil outside the city? Will that be possible if there for I don't know, guys. There's so many mysteries when it comes to the end of time. You know, where we live with God forever. All we can do is kind of imagine it. But you know, the way I imagine it is it's almost like a massive city like this, right? Where you've got the gates that are pearls, right? But you've got the foundation stones that are all the different, you know, the 12 different foundation stones of the 12 apostles. And then the gates are about the, you know, the tribes of Israel written on the gates. And it's huge. And it's like, I imagine this coming down out of heaven on top of the current city of Jerusalem. But remember, this is going to be way bigger. This is massive, guys. But doesn't that it looks cool. So some people think it's going to be like a pyramid. But, you know, just the straightforward reading seems to be a square or a cube like this, right? Man, I don't know, guys. This is so mysterious. But you know what's interesting? In Saudi Arabia, they're building something like this, guys. It's this right here. In Saudi Arabia, they're building a massive cube city. It's, I mean, it's not going to be a whole city. There's city around this. But in this massive cube, there are going to be hotels, malls probably, you know, probably golf courses or apartments, you know, office buildings. It's massive, guys. I think it's 400 meters. So yeah, 400 meters tall. That's huge. That is massive. 400 meters. And then 400 meters. So it's just like a cube, right? So you'd be able to fit so much stuff in there. It's hard to kind of picture. But maybe this drawing gives a good example, because these are normal tall buildings over here, right? But a massive thing like this, I mean, you'd never have to leave it. You do all your shopping there, probably have schools, universities in here and all that stuff. I don't know. I have no idea. Wow. Interesting, guys. They're building something like this in Saudi Arabia. But the one we're talking about, the New Jerusalem, that's going to come down from heaven, that's going to be way bigger than this. You know, that's going to be something like this, guys. So if you look at a map of the Middle East today, I mean, 2,000 kilometers is literally like this red box I put over here. Like you go, 2,000 kilometers that way, that way, that way, that way. We're talking about like the whole Middle East. Almost. So that would be a massive city, guys. Man, this is so interesting. It's so mysterious, right? But guys, you know, I want to talk a little bit about the bride. Why is God using this word? What's the reason behind it? So he's kind of talking about there's going to be a marriage supper of the Lamb. It's almost like his people, like the church, are going to be kind of married to Jesus in some mysterious kind of way. And then the city also, you know, married to the Lamb in some way. Well, when I hear this word, guys, this is a beautiful word, the word bride. It's a bride is intimate, right? A bride is the most intimate, has the most intimate relationship with the king, right? So the king or the king's son, let's say, the prince and the princess, right? The bride becomes the princess. They have a intimate relationship. Okay, so, you know, nothing can get in the way of that relationship. Nothing can get between that relationship. And also, when I think of the word bride, I think of like purity. And I think of like youthful, you know. It's interesting that we all want to be young, right? Everybody wants to be young, forever young, right? There are songs written about it. There, I don't know, books, like myths, or like the Fountain of Youth, is that? Or, yeah, the Fountain of Youth. I don't know, guys. We all want to be youthful. And we're going to get it at the end of the story. We're going to be full of energy, full of youth, full of vigor. If you're tired, just wait. Just wait for Jesus. Put your trust in Jesus. Wait for the end of the story, guys. I think we're very, very close. And we're going to be in the position where we won't need to be far away from Jesus. And that's the reason I like the word bride. It's beautiful. So, like if you think about a husband and a wife, right? Let's say there's a king and a queen. Okay. The king and his bride, nothing can get in between this. So the king also has a general. Let's say this is his general, the top general, and then below the general, there are, soldiers and that kind of stuff. If you're this person here and you want to talk to the king, well, you have to go through this guy, right? But the bride doesn't have to do that. The bride always has access to her husband, and there's nothing that separates them. Nobody is in between. Does that make sense? And guys, this way it actually it gives me some anxiety, some fear. If I think about being in a relationship with Jesus like this, because it almost feels like I can't get to Jesus, or there might be someone above me that might not care about me, that I have to go through to get to Jesus. Guys, but I want to tell you this. Nobody will have authority over you who doesn't care about you. Okay, when we get to the end of the story, you get Jesus. And nothing will be able to separate you from Jesus. When his disciples were fighting, like Jesus, very often the disciples were kind of fighting over who was going to be the best, who was going to be the greatest. And Jesus always shut that down. He said, nope, that's how the world does it. You're not going to be that way. That's not how it's going to be among you. It's going to be different. You're going to serve each other humbly, right? Jesus is the king. There's no like jostling for power, jockeying for, different positions in his, like James and John, remember? They asked Jesus, we want to be on your right and on your left in your kingdom. We want to be the closest people to you. And Jesus said, he didn't grant them that. He said, it's not for me to decide that. So that's up to his Father to decide. But the Father is not going to allow his Son to be withheld from you if you have put your faith in Jesus, right? So you are part of the bride of Christ. And that's why I love the word bride so much. It's a bit weird. Maybe it might seem a bit weird. Like if you're a man, right? For me to consider myself like part of the bride of Christ, it's a bit strange, but it's actually not. It's a beautiful thing because we get Jesus. We get to be close, the most intimate. Okay, like who is more intimate with the king, his bride or his general? Like if we go back to that picture, like the king has a great relationship with his general. He loves his general. But the thing is that the king has she has his heart, right? They have each other's heart. And that's what this story's all about. God is the one who made our emotions. God is the one who made our heart. And, they have each other in a special way, unlike the generals. Now, guys, in heaven there are angels, There are other creatures in heaven that he's made. I don't even really know what angels are, to be honest. But it's clear in the story that men and women who he made in his image, they are his special possession. The church, the bride, Israel, it all, if you read the Old Testament, Israel is often compared to the wife of God. And then when we get to the New Testament, the church is also compared to the bride of Christ. So, like I said, it's pretty mysterious. But the great news is that, like, if you're in this position here, nothing can get in this way. Okay, this person, the general, cannot get in between. Like, the bride, like, who's higher? Who's higher up? Is it the queen or the general? Well, in reality, they have great respect for each other, right? The queen doesn't tell the general what to do. That's not her job. It's the king's job. So the queen never tries to take authority. That's not her job. It's not her role to take. So if the queen and the general have a conversation, it's full of respect, full of dignity. The general knows he doesn't tell her what to do, and she doesn't tell him what to do. But the general knows if he tries to get in between the relationship at all, he's a dead man. Okay, nothing touches the bride. Nobody gets in between the king and his bride. That's totally his business. He's the king, and he's chosen. That's the thing. He's chosen her. And so because of that, everybody else has to respect that and honor that. So if we think of Jesus as the king and his bride, the church, no angels, no other creatures, nothing can get in between that. And Jesus loves his bride very much. So to me, this is really comforting, guys, because you won't be in a situation where you kind of have to fight for position. You have to fight for, to be in a position where you get treated well. Have you ever had a good boss in your life? I've never had a good boss who loves me, who takes, bosses usually just try to squeeze their employees for every last dime they can get out of them, right? So that's what's so beautiful about a relationship like this, is because it's so intimate and it's full of love. It's this very special relationship. So I love the word bride, guys. Remember the parable Jesus told of the three guys. Okay, so Jesus said there was a guy who was going away on a long trip, to be crowned king to a different country, and he gave his servants each some of his money to invest, right? And so this guy turned the money. He increased it by tenfold, right? And he got put in charge of 10 cities. This guy increased it by 5 times the amount. This guy did nothing with it. And so let's just read that for a second. So the first servant reported, "Master, I have invested your money and made 10 times the original amount." Right? This is when the king comes back from his trip. He calls his servants in and says, "What did you guys do with the resources I entrusted you with?" And the first servant says, "I invested it and made 10 times the amount." "Well done," the king exclaimed. "You are a good servant. You have been faithful with a little I entrusted to you. So you will be governor of 10 cities as your reward." The next servant reported, "Master, I invested your money and made 5 times the original amount." "Well done," the king said. "You will be governor over 5 cities." Okay, so notice, guys, that this guy who did the best, he didn't end up as this guy's boss. This guy is not this guy's boss, right? So to me, this is great news, because I feel like, sometimes I feel like I haven't done that much for God. I haven't been super successful in my efforts. I've tried hard, but and so I know other people have done great stuff, and they're so successful in I don't know how they do it, but a lot of times it's fake. So some of the guys, some of the biggest churches, some of the most famous pastors or missionaries, honestly, sometimes it's just a load of garbage. So it's not good to be jealous of people who seem like they have a lot of fruit from their lives. Maybe it's just rotten fruit. Okay, so I don't know. God will be the judge in the end, but it's comforting for me to know that I'm not going to be put underneath someone else's authority, and then that person's not going to take good care of me. That person's not going to love me. To me, it feels like I'm being punished then. I have to have a job where the person above me is going to mistreat me. Guys, most jobs I've had, I've gotten treated like garbage from my bosses. So maybe that's why I kind of have a bit of a fear about this, or an insecurity about this. What happened to this guy? This guy, well, he did nothing. He did nothing, so he didn't get in. We don't know what happened to him. Yeah. Actually, we don't know. The story doesn't say, but we know the master was not happy with him. He wasn't happy with this guy. But we don't know, did this guy have to go live in one of these cities? It doesn't say. But yeah, we're each going to have a personal relationship with Jesus, and it's going to be an intimate relationship. That's what he wants. Remember what he said? Remember in his messages to the 7 churches? Jesus said this, "And I will give to each one a white stone, and on the stone will be engraved a new name that no one understands except the one who receives it." Okay, so it seems like Jesus wants to have a personal relationship with each of us, not just kind of some collective, group like the church. No. We're all going to belong to Jesus. And remember, guys, in the story, when we talked about Jesus, like in over half the episodes in the series, they were about Jesus. Everyone who came to Jesus in faith got him. Like, did Jesus turn anybody away? Remember Jairus? He came to Jesus. Jesus stopped what he was doing immediately. He went with Jairus. What about the woman who was bleeding? Jesus just stopped and dealt with her. She got him. Anybody who comes to Jesus in faith, they get him, guys, and they get to see him. They get to touch him. Remember Mary Magdalene? After Jesus rose again from the dead, she just grabbed onto him, right? Thomas, all the disciples, they got to just touch Jesus. They got to be with him. So all of us are going to be able to be with Jesus. We're not going to have to go through someone else to get to Jesus. Does that make sense? I think that's why he's using the word bride. Because a bride doesn't need to go through anybody to get to the king. At least it shouldn't be that way. I know in human relationships, sometimes maybe a bride doesn't have access to her husband. Maybe the husband is off somewhere doing something and she has no access. That's very wrong, guys. A wife must always have access, easy access to her husband. The husband should be very generous to his wife in time, gifts, anything, because she's his special chosen bride. He chose her, right? So we, as the bride of Christ, we've been chosen, guys. He died for us. He purchased us. That's why we belong to him. We are purified in his blood. If you don't feel clean, if you don't feel like a pure bride, well, we're all sinners, guys. We get purified in his blood. He's the one who cleanses us. Okay, so we get him. So for me, I often find myself worrying about this. Will I actually get to be with Jesus, or will I need to kind of fight through a crowd of people? Anybody who has faith can get him, guys. And at the marriage supper of the Lamb, we are united to him forever. And nothing's going to be able to separate that. Okay? Guys, a bride doesn't access her husband through his mother. So a bride, right? She doesn't need to she doesn't need to figure out how to get to her husband. She already has him. They're perfectly intimate. Okay, I know in our relationship, in our world, human relationships, human marriages, they're not that intimate. But we all know what a relationship is supposed to be. That's like an intimate one, right? Like a marriage, right? Is so intimate. So the bride doesn't need to go through anybody else, guys. She definitely doesn't need to go through his mother. So guys, I've talked to a bunch of Catholics in my life, and the feeling that I get from Catholics is that the only way for us to access Jesus is through his mother. Or at least the mother is going to help us get to him. Well, no, look at this. God is choosing to write the Bible with the word bride. The bride doesn't need to go through Mary to get to Jesus, because Mary herself is part of the bride, right? Remember the upper room. After Jesus went up to heaven, the early church was there in the upper room, and they were all together. Mary was one of them. Okay, so Mary is part of the church, guys. Mary is part of the bride. So this is just a major issue I have with Catholicism. This is the biggest reason probably why I can't become a Catholic. I believe that a bride has direct access to her husband. That's why. A bride doesn't need to go through the mother to get to the husband. Right? Does that make sense? So, I love Catholics and Orthodox and Protestants and everything. There's some things in each group that I don't like. There's certain things that I love. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe I'll make a video about that in the future. All the things I love or hate about different groups. But this is what I believe. The bride and anybody who belongs to Jesus is the bride, right? He's the one who purchased us. He's the one who brings us near to him. So we get Jesus. We'll get him in a very close way. We'll be with him. We'll have his heart and he'll have our heart. Give him your heart today, guys. Every day I pray to Jesus, and I try to, sometimes I think about the different relationships in my prayers. Sometimes I pray to God as, my Father, right? That's how Jesus taught us to pray. But then sometimes I think about, this type of relationship too. And I think what are the rights and responsibilities of a bride to the husband? Why is God using these different roles? What does he want us to learn from these different roles? So it's interesting to think about, guys. But the main reason it's comforting to me is because this relationship cannot be broken, and it's permanent, right? It's permanent till death do us part, right? Well, in the new world, there'll be no death. So it's just going to be totally permanent. Nobody will be able to get in between that. Nothing will be able to separate us from Jesus. So, if you suffer from this kind of feeling of abandonment, or this feeling of you have to somehow perform, you have to somehow work hard to earn love, well, it won't be like that in the future. So just relax and rest in this beautiful picture at the end. We're just going to be with Jesus forever, and we're not going to lose his love. We're not going to be in danger of losing that, guys. So take comfort in that, guys. And there it is. That's the second last chapter in the Bible. Next episode, we're going to look at the last page, the very last page of the Bible. So it's just beautiful that it kind of ends with this, almost like a marriage supper, the marriage supper of the Lamb, the bride and the Lamb, the bride and the groom. It's heaven and earth coming together, right? This is what God is interested in, unity, bringing together. So, if you think that the relationship is going this way, well, that's your fault for thinking that. That's your problem. God is the one who's always trying to get reconciled with his people, right? That's what this is all about. God forgiving us, bringing us near to be with him forever. And that's a very foreign thought for a lot of us, guys. The idea that God actually wants us. Yeah, it's true. That's why we need to let this book kind of dictate our thoughts, not our worldly experiences, not what we see happening in this world at all, or in our culture or traditions or religion or anything like that. We have to let this book define our understanding of reality, even if it's if it's a bit of a stretch, like this idea of a new city coming down out of heaven, a massive city. It's hard to imagine, but we have certain things that we can relate to. We know what a bride is. We know what a husband is. We know what a king is. We know what a city is. We know what it means to be put in charge of something. God hasn't given us nothing, guys. God's given us so much to think about. And that's why it's so beautiful just to take this book and just to think through some things. And I don't know, I like thinking about this. I hope you do too. And this is so beautiful because the end ends in intimacy. This story ends in intimacy. It ends in closeness with God. It doesn't end in permanent separation from God. Some religions do. Some religions, you never get to see God. You never get to be with God. Well, this one ends in intimacy, where we get God and we get him forever. Beautiful. Very comforting, guys. So anyway, thank you very much for watching this. Like I said, next episode is going to be the last in this story, but I'm going to make actually one more after that, just to bring it all home. So guys, after this, 2 more episodes in the series. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I love you very much. Hope you're doing great, and I'll see you over in the next episode of Mark's Bible Overview. Take care.